came up first. It wasn't on NBC. They're not watching us, unfortunately. But when the first call came in with Vermont, there was a loud cheer. There was those big chants of Bernie, Bernie, and then it switched to the second projection from Virginia, and that's when you heard the loud boos go across. And then it showed an image of the crowd here, and that's when the crowd completely erupted. The thing about this this setting, this is a typical rally, I'm told. This is not going to be a regular election night speech that you'll hear from Senator Sanders. There's a band here. Fish is going to perform. There's actually two separate stages. There's one stage behind me and another stage over there where the band is going to perform. So this crowd is ready to celebrate.
Check field, Brewster, thank you very much. Fascinating stuff.
Wow.
I don't know if there are other campaigns right now where they boo at the mention of the other candidates and the other. I mean,
although Bernie was booed at the last debate, and that was a first.
Oh, from the debate crowd.
From the crowd.
That was weird.
But just the presence of boos at this portion of the campaign, to your point.
That was strange. I mean, every debate is different, but it was a very volatile crowd making themselves known at that last debate. But in terms of election parties, I'm not used to seeing the crowd boo at the mention of, especially a candidate of the same party. You don't, that's
it's not a good look. Look, I mean, and it doesn't project a lot of confidence. I think their candidate is still in a very strong position. And this is sort of what I was alluding to before. I think if we look back and the Nevada caucuses end up being sort of the high water mark for momentum and possibility in terms of growing Bernie's reach and appeal, that'll be a sad thing for supporters, but it will not perhaps be disconnected from some of the questions about the conduct. I mean, there are a lot of questions among Democratic activists, and I can sort of report on this. I'm not as exposed to this, but I know a lot of Democratic activists are exposed to a lot of passion, and I think you have to chalk it up to passion. Let's not impugn the motive. I mean, the passion for Bernie doesn't allow any space to consider anybody else.
The passion is genuine and it's there, but it can be pretty tough. You know, it can be really intense. You know, it's interesting. So last week, you know, a few days ago, we were saying, does Joe Biden have a firewall in South Carolina? Tonight, before the evening is over, we might be asking if Bernie Sanders has a firewall in California. If he has.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. That's why all the Pulitzers make sense.
Steve Kornacki, we think Eugene should have a column for some of this. That was a heck of a quote from our friend Gene. But in addition to numbers that I see are filling up your board, can you start with an answer to this question? Explain to the good folks watching how cautious our election unit is, how highly unusual it was for us to make a poll-closed projection for Joe Biden in the Commonwealth.
Yeah, I mean, they are extremely cautious. Pardon me, they did it last Saturday as well. Actually, this is two straight, I guess, but before that, if you can remember a couple weeks ago, I know it feels like ancient history, the night of the Nevada caucuses, we had an exit poll that came in that night that showed Bernie Sanders far ahead of the field, not quite as far ahead as Joe Biden is in the exit poll here in Virginia. So as a result, back then, even though we looked at that exit poll in Nevada, and I would have, gun to my head, bet my life that Bernie Sanders was going to win based on that exit poll, they waited then to get some precincts in. So this has crossed an extra threshold for our decision desk to be calling it. We are getting some actual results, and it's just a scattering right here. But again, the Biden leading overwhelmingly here. And one thing I want to draw your attention to, you see the state called for Biden. That means, given what our decision desk is doing, this is likely to be a very big win for Joe Biden in Virginia. It then raises the question, since we are in a delegate race right now, and there are 99 pledged delegates up for grabs in Virginia, when you're in a delegate race and you're winning a state big, you don't want a lot of candidates hitting the 15% threshold. So as these returns come in tonight, it is even better news for Joe Biden if nobody else, and that means Bloomberg and Warren, get above 15. If it's just Biden and it's just Sanders and it is a Biden landslide, then Biden is going to net from this state something on the order of 30 delegates, meaning he'll probably get like 65. Sanders would get 34. It'd be some split like that. Be a huge delegate haul. Those are tough to get in these states. You get an opportunity for that. Look, again, it just changed here to 57-23. So he wants Bloomberg, Biden does. He wants Bloomberg and Warren to stay somewhere close to where they are. Looking at our exit poll, looking at some of the splits right now, it's very much possible that that's going to happen for Joe Biden.
Out to the house of chicken and waffles we go. Joe Biden is entering the restaurant, I'm told, in Los Angeles. Mike Memoli, our man there.
There was a false alarm earlier, and I think it's less of a false alarm now. This is the kind of thing that happens covering the Biden campaign, but he's on his way in. I've moved my position just a bit off to the side to be a good team player here with my friends and the rest of the press forum.
No, okay. All right. I feel like we'll
I think
peeping
what
out
I
your
want
neckline.
while we're waiting for the former vice president to come in, I think what we're seeing tonight is indicative of what has been, I think, a shift in some of the strategy from the Biden campaign over the last, few weeks. What was a strategy built around crowd events that weren't necessarily the most highly attended crowd events in the Iowa and New Hampshire phase of this campaign. I think they recognize that the Biden that Democratic voters have come to love over the years is the one that we're about to see here, the one who's in their face, who's come shaking hands, glad-handing. And so we've seen less over the last few weeks of the kind of traditional rallies that a Bernie Sanders does that have 10,000 people or more in attendance, and more just a focus on Joe Biden, the man, giving him opportunities to take selfies, to do the kind of retail that his campaign insists that he does better than anybody. And we're finally at the point where he's inching his way closer to the door.
Hey, Mike, while we're waiting for the vice president to approach the door, can I ask you about one thing you mentioned earlier, which is that you said Vice President Biden took a swing through Oakland, California, today. I think that raised a lot of questions about whether or not he might be seeking to get an endorsement from or otherwise try to cultivate support from Kamala Harris, who's announced her campaign in Oakland, California, and who's from Alameda County. Any truth to that speculation, or was that just a random coincidence?
Well, that was, speaking of false alarms, certainly a false alarm there. I think given what we saw yesterday with this unbelievable and well-executed rollout of the former candidate endorsements in Texas yesterday, people saw Oakland on the schedule. I can assure you it was something that had been, in fact, on the schedule for some time. We know that Senator Harris had been in Washington voting, and so when we saw an initial report come across indicating that an endorsement might be happening there, we were suspicious. I can say this, when I interviewed the vice president yesterday and I asked him about whether he's speaking to some of these other former candidates trying to court their endorsements, he said things are moving very fast. And one thing we know from other reporting about Senator Harris specifically is that she was interested in endorsing. She and Biden do have a relationship that goes back, especially her friendship with Beau, the former vice president's late son, when they both served as attorneys general together. I know that that's an endorsement he certainly would love to have, and I know from my time on the campaign trail that that's a potential ticket that a lot of voters would love to see. But the timing is everything, and perhaps Senator Harris is interested in waiting for another moment to throw her support behind the vice president, if that is, in fact, who she wants to throw her support behind at all.
It has been interesting to watch the heavyweights in California Democratic politics make their decision. The wife of California Governor Gavin Newsom endorsing Elizabeth Warren, former U.S. Senator Barbara Boxer endorsing Joe Biden, L.A. Mayor Eric Garcetti endorsing Vice President Biden, Mayor Bloomberg getting an endorsement from London Breed, who is the relatively recently elected mayor of San Francisco. So as a native Californian, I can tell you, California, Nicole, you are as well, Californians are not used to mattering in presidential politics, either in the primary, in either party, or in the general. And so to see California power brokers get courted for something other than California-specific politics and money, and exactly, it is... it's something new and something that is sort of fresh to, I think, the structure in California.
And the idea that Biden is going to be before the California voters without a dollar spent on, I mean, governors have to raise presidential campaign-size amounts of money to run for governor statewide in California because the media is so expensive.
Here we go. We may actually see him come through the doorway.
Mr. Vice President, NBC projected that you're the winner in Virginia. What do you make of that call, especially coming so early?
Hey, buddy. This poor guy wants to hide. It feels good. I don't know what the outcome, what the actual results are, but it feels good, and we're feeling optimistic. I think we're going to do well in some other states as well.
How do you define success for you tonight?
I told you, I'm not the pundit. You guys will define that.
All right, well, we will do...
Welcome, everybody. The reason why we're here today is because a few years ago, we came here with President Obama, so it's the historical significance of coming here today with Vice President
Okay. Hey, team, how are you back there? We're really messing things up for you, aren't we?
We're also here with our mayor, Mayor Garcetti. One of the leaders of the State Assembly, Mike Gibson.
All right, Mike. How are you? Diane Watson's over there.
Leaders of the State Assembly, Mike Gibson.
All right, Mike. How are you? Diane Watson's over there.
See Vice President Biden working the crowd there. LA Mayor Eric Garcetti is with them. I believe that's Congresswoman Karen Bassel, but she hasn't turned around to face the cameras. I believe that's who that is. Vice President Biden very excited about his win in Virginia. Let's go to Elizabeth Warren, who's in Michigan right now. She's addressing supporters.
Cast a vote from your heart and vote for the person you think will make the best president of the United States of America. Because I want you to think for a minute about this democracy. You are the ones who get to pick the person who will be the next president, and it is an awesome thing. You are going to do it right here in Michigan next week. People are doing it in California right now, and that's what it means to have a democracy. I'm in this race because I believe I will make the best president of the United States. Tell you why. I was not born a politician, but I was born a fighter. And I want you to know this. Is this on? Good. I want you to know this. I gotta have a loud voice here. I come by this honest. I think that maybe the reason I fought all my life is because I learned this from my mother. I want to tell you a story about me. I grew up in Oklahoma. Okay, we got a few Okies here. I grew up in Oklahoma. I am the baby. I have 3 much older brothers. They all went off and joined the military. I am what used to be called a late in life baby. My mother always just called me the surprise. Yep, my 3 brothers are all retired. They're back in Oklahoma now. To this day, they are referred to as the boys. That's to distinguish them from the surprise. Now, when I was in middle school, all 3 of the boys were gone by then, and it was just my mama and my daddy and me. And my daddy had a heart attack. He pulled through, but he couldn't work for a long, long time. And I still remember the day when we lost the family station wagon. I remember how my mother used to tuck me in at night, and she would always kiss me and give me this big smile, and I knew what was coming next. She'd leave my room, close the door, and then I'd hear her start to cry. She never wanted to cry in front of me, and I knew that. This is when I learned words like mortgage and foreclosure. And one day, I walked into my folks' bedroom, and laid out on the bed was the dress. Now, some of you in this room will know the dress. It's the one that only comes out for weddings, funerals, and graduations. And there, down by the foot of the bed, was my mother. And she had on her slip, and she was in her stocking feet, and she was pacing
for the crowd from Elizabeth Warren, and we hesitate to interrupt, but we are approaching the bottom of the hour. That means poll closing in North Carolina. Robert Gibbs, former press secretary in the Obama White House, has joined our conversation. Robert, thus far, the night thus far, your assessment of it especially for Joe Biden, but to a lesser extent Bernie Sanders, given the results so far?
Well, look, I think the night has gone kind of as we have expected post-South Carolina. Pretty remarkable to see the movement in Virginia, probably a toss-up state 5 days ago, and a place that it looks like the vice president is going to do very well in. Obviously, Vermont is going to go pretty strong for Bernie. I think it'll be interesting to watch the night as you see waves of real estate going to different folks, right? That arc of the North that will be the Maine, the Minnesotas, over into the Colorados, where Bernie will do better. That southeastern swing where the vice president will do better. And then obviously the big prizes of the night. Where does Texas and where does California end up? I think will be fascinating to watch.
40 seconds coming up to North Carolina. Again, one of the more fascinating electorates, especially as the Biden campaign had to look at it and target it.
And a hard-fought state. I mean, North Carolina is a battleground like you can't believe. And Bloomberg spent a ton of money there, more than $12 million. Sanders spent almost $2 million there. Biden hasn't spent much anywhere, but what he has spent in places like North Carolina.
The music heralds what's coming up, as you can see, reading along with us as we approach 7:30 Eastern Time and the closing of the polls in the state of North Carolina. At 0-0, we have 7:30, and it turns out a big night for Joe Biden just got bigger. We are making a poll closing projection that Joe Biden will win the North Carolina primary. This is on top of Joe Biden's projected victory in the Commonwealth of Virginia. This is on top of Bernie Sanders' projected victory in his home state of Vermont. Here is how we lay out, looking at the delegates awarded thus far tonight. And here is how we lay out, looking at the delegates thus far this season in all. Remember, we have some big real estate coming tonight. It's not called Super Tuesday for nothing. Steve Kornacki at the big board. And Steve, I have to repeat my question. Remind the folks how consequential it is to call the state of North Carolina as a projection, 7:30 Eastern Time closing.
Yeah, we say they're rare. They're getting pretty common all of a sudden. And what you're seeing here, some demographic characteristics very similar here in North Carolina to what we had in Virginia. 27%, just over a quarter of the electorate in North Carolina, African-American. Take a look at how the black vote is breaking down. Again, Joe Biden over 60%. Sanders still stuck on that number of just 16%. Overwhelming support from a quarter of the electorate there for Joe Biden. This pattern is now South Carolina, Virginia, North Carolina. We are seeing it everywhere. When you look at white voters, by the way, in North Carolina, here's what you're seeing. Again, Biden's winning there, too. It's a double-digit margin. It's not as much as the black voter margin, but it's a double-digit margin. That adds up to a landslide. That adds up to a landslide in North Carolina for Joe Biden, a landslide for Joe Biden in Virginia. And it's telling us a couple of things. First of all, the results we're getting from these early states are telling us that the idea that there was broad momentum for Joe Biden coming out of South Carolina, that is now being backed up by what we're seeing in these results. Why do I say that? Because on Saturday night, as Joe Biden was winning South Carolina overwhelmingly, we got a poll out of Virginia, and it put Bernie Sanders ahead by 2 points. That's how much movement, how quickly and how much you've had movement in states like Virginia and North Carolina. It tells you that the question I posed at the beginning of the night, was this going to be about Bernie Sanders and how big his delegate lead was going to be? Or was tonight's story going to be about whether Bernie Sanders was going to emerge tonight with a delegate lead? The results we are seeing in Virginia and North Carolina tonight are suggesting that that second storyline is the one we maybe need to start following here.
Thank you, Steve.
Kornacki, can I just ask you one follow-up question that is about the age of voters that are turning out? Obviously, Senator Sanders, his theory of the case is that while he may lose moderate and swing voters, he will more than make up for it by turning out first-time voters and young voters. Do we have any meaningful data yet in terms of figuring out whether or not the proportion of the electorate in these states is tilting young or old or neither?
Yeah, I'm just looking at North Carolina right now in our exit poll. Under 30 years old, 13%. and the breakdown there's 54 to 21. Here's one I can show you. The under 45, over 45 divide in North Carolina. Take a look here, under 45. By the way, Sanders winning this, double digits, 42-31. This is not the margin his campaign has been hoping on in states. Give you a comparison in Nevada. Remember the night in Nevada when Bernie Sanders was winning big and we were talking about maybe there's a bandwagon effect? This same group of voters in Nevada was 56 Sanders and 8 Biden.
Yeah.
The youngest voters. Tonight, 31 Biden, nearly a third of the younger electorate here, under 45 with Biden, and Sanders dropping from 56 to 42. And then if you take a look here at over 45, just to show you, Biden 50, and Sanders behind Bloomberg. No inroads for Sanders with older voters. Biden in states like North Carolina and Virginia making some inroads with younger voters.
Wow, Bloomberg outpacing Sanders with voters age 45 and over.
In North Carolina.
In North Carolina. Fascinating. Steve Kornacki. Let's bring into the conversation now a man who has been the man of the hour, and uncomfortably so, for months now. He is the chairman of the Democratic National Committee, one of the hardest jobs in politics. Mr. Tom Perez, thank you for joining us tonight, sir. It's good to have you here.
Pleasure to be with all of you. Thank you.
Let me ask you about your dueling frontrunners tonight. We've got 5 candidates left in the race: Tulsi Gabbard, Mike Bloomberg, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, and Joe Biden. We've seen Joe Biden do very well tonight, get poll closing calls in North Carolina and Virginia. As the former vice president continues to project this incredible strength in southern states, what does that mean to the overall Democratic strategy for the general election when we think about the Democratic Party's ability to compete in states like that?
Well, one thing, Rachel, that I'm most proud of in the 3+ years I've been on the job is that we've become a 50-state party again. One of the first elections we invested in was Doug Jones in Alabama. We invested in 2018 in Georgia. We have an initiative called Organizing Corps where we're putting 1,200 organizers in 8 battleground states to hand over to the nominee. Those states include North Carolina, Georgia, and Florida, and Arizona. We're organizing everywhere, and I think Democrats can win everywhere. And, you know, when you ignore the South, you are really slapping African-American voters in the face, and we shouldn't do that. That's the backbone of our party. And so we're absolutely competing there. We've got 2 Senate races in Georgia, and we're going to compete heavily down there.
Mr. Chairman, there's been a lot of drama within the field over the last 72 hours since South Carolina, seeing 3 of your candidates drop out, seeing 2 of them endorse Vice President Biden in dramatic fashion. Is the Democratic Party formally, the DNC, are you playing any role in those kinds of backroom negotiations, those kinds of discussions among candidates and formal candidates about who stays in the race, who gets out, and who endorses who?
No, those are up to the candidates themselves, and we leave that to the candidates, and they know when it's time to end their campaigns, and I trust them to do that. And what you saw from the decisions of candidates over the last few days, they understand that it's not about any one candidate. It's about making sure Democrats can win. And I respect their judgment. I respect the judgment of those who are still in the race. Tonight is young. We've got 2 or 3 states that have reported, or at least that you've projected. We got 11 to go. And again, this is all about math. This is about 1,991. So a lot more to go.
One of the things that's happened on your chairmanship is that a lot of states that used to run caucuses have been talked out of it. Obviously, we've still got Iowa and Nevada who had their caucuses this year, but just tonight, Maine, Colorado, Minnesota, Utah, I might have even missed one, are all states that previously had caucuses that tonight are going to be holding primaries instead. You have signaled in the past that you're happy with that you'd rather have these states doing primaries. That still hold tonight? Do you have any regrets on that, on that movement?
No. Well, Rachel, I think the 4 happiest people in America tonight are the 4 party chairs in those states that you just mentioned, who now don't have to run their own caucus. And the reason that I prefer primaries over caucuses is more people participate. Look at the record turnout in New Hampshire. We busted through the turnout of 08 in Obama. Look at South Carolina. People said you'd never eclipse Barack Obama in 2008, and we did. And we had 14 caucus states 4 years ago. We had 7 this time. And we're going to have a conversation after the season is over. We can't require states to move because it requires an act of the legislature. And there's some Republican governors who won't pay for a taxpayer for an actual primary. But we're certainly going to continue this conversation because I certainly prefer primaries to caucuses. More people participate. That's the bottom line. We got great energy. Let's make it as easy as possible for eligible people to vote.
Democratic Party Chairman Tom Perez, sir, I know it's going to be a long, long night for you as well as for us. Thanks for being with us tonight. Appreciate it.
Always a pleasure.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're going to talk to two of our friends in this segment. Leanne Caldwell first at the Cameron Village Regional Library in a great place, downtown Raleigh, North Carolina. Leanne, I know you talked to a ton of voters. We're able to see you, for starters, while you can't see us. And what were voters saying as they went to the polls in North Carolina today?
Well, Brian, what voters were saying is exactly what the results are showing, that things were splitting overwhelmingly for Joe Biden. This morning, we were at a precinct in Durham, North Carolina, which is predominantly African-American, and we heard so many people talking about their support for Joe Biden. And now we're in an affluent district in Raleigh, and same thing. A lot of people said that they were supporting Joe Biden because of his momentum coming from South Carolina, and also the number of endorsements he's gotten over the past few days has given them the confidence to vote for him today, thinking that he is perhaps the best person to beat Donald Trump in November. And this precinct, it had great turnout, Brian. They say that it's up to 50%, which is really high for a Democratic primary. So they're also Democrats are pointing to voter enthusiasm as well. We're just seeing the last voters just exit now because things are going to close down real soon here, Brian.
Leanne Caldwell, thank you. Covering one of the big stories of the night, an impressive victory at poll closing as projected by our network for Joe Biden in North Carolina. Steve Kornacki, they tell me you're getting more of a delegate count?
We're starting to get more of a delegate count. Let me show you first also some results here from Virginia coming in. Nearly a quarter of the state is now in. I mean, look at this. Joe Biden is leading here by 30 points. Does it remind you of South Carolina and all? This is a huge margin we're seeing. And look where it's coming from. You're seeing suburbs outside Richmond here, Chesterfield County, most of the vote in there. Look at that. Joe Biden up 33 points. Let's go to Henrico. North of it, again, more than half the vote. Biden running at 60%. What's still to come in Virginia? The biggest of them all, Fairfax County, just outside D.C. This is epicenter of sort of the blue wave voters we talked about in 2018. You would expect this, based on everything we're seeing, to be huge for Biden. In other words, when you see Biden up 54-23, you can expect a very big delegate haul. What are we looking at right now? This is where the current delegate race stands. Biden has been allocated 16 delegates from Virginia so far. He was just allocated 34 from Virginia, I should say. 34 of the state's 99. He's been allocated 16 so far in North Carolina of that state's 110. It puts him, you can see, 33 up in our running count. But again, what you're seeing here, there are a lot still to be allocated. If anything like this holds, you're looking at a scenario where Biden can get like 70, 65, 70 of the 99 delegates here out of Virginia. And that would leave Sanders, obviously, with far fewer. It gives Biden an opportunity here, if this is replicated through the South, if he can run close to Sanders, even in Minnesota, it sets up a scenario where we could get all the way out to California tonight, and Biden might be running ahead in the delegate count when we get to California. You went to Vegas with that proposition a week ago. You could have got 40-1 odds.
And all of our friends cannot wait to comment on the numbers as you just laid them out. We have another call. American Samoa on the board tonight. And there is your projected winner in American Samoa, the former mayor of New York, Michael Bloomberg. A decisive victory over, we are led to believe, Tulsi Gabbard, a resident of the Pacific Rim, at 29%. We're going to regroup, gather ourselves as we look at the delegate board tonight. A break in our coverage. We're coming right back. We'll hear from Nicole Wallace. We'll hear from Robert Gibbs. We'll hear from David Plouffe. We'll hear from Claire McCaskill. There are the numbers.
Things you can do with Schwab. You can earn more when you invest your cash. You can get a satisfaction guarantee. You can also wonder why our competitors don't offer that. Schwab, a modern approach to wealth management.
Our retirement plan with Voya gives us confidence.
So we can spend a bit today knowing we're prepared for tomorrow.
Wow. Do you think you overdid it, maybe?
Overdid what?
Well planned, well invested, well protected.
Voya, be confident to and through retirement.
Breakfast wants you back. Try Just Crack an Egg, packed with real potatoes, veggies, meat, and cheese. Just add a fresh egg for a hot scramble in less than 2 minutes to get those warm, fuzzy feelings again. Take breakfast back. Find it in the egg aisle.
There are talkers, and there are doers. We need a president who gets big things done. That's Mike Bloomberg, who built a global company from scratch, ran the largest and most diverse city in America, expanding healthcare for 700,000. As president, he'll make sure everyone has access to affordable care, and he'll protect and strengthen Medicare, and beat the one big thing standing in our way. Mike will get it done.
I'm Mike Bloomberg, and I approve this message.
Take Prilosec OTC and take control of heartburn. So you don't have to stash antacids here, or here. Kick your antacid habit with Prilosec OTC. 1 pill a day, 24 hours, zero heartburn.
It's a familiar story.
Allergies ruining your sleep, and next day too. Taking Zysol at night relieves allergies while you sleep, so you wake refreshed. Plus, it works faster than Claritin, and on first dose provides the same relief as Zyrtec at nearly half the size. Be wise all. Take Zysol at night.
We made USAA insurance for members like Martin, an Air Force veteran made of doing what's right, not what's easy. So when a hailstorm hit, USAA reached out before he could even inspect the damage.
That's how you do it right.
USAA insurance is made just the way Martin's family needs it. With hassle-free claims, he got paid before his neighbor even got started. Because doing right by our members, that's what's right. USAA. What you're made of, we're made for. USAA.
Do you have a life insurance policy you no longer need? Now you can sell your policy, even a term policy, for an immediate cash payment.
We thought we had planned carefully for our retirement.
But we quickly realized we needed a way to supplement our income.
If you have $100,000 or more of life insurance, you may qualify to sell your policy. Don't cancel or let your policy lapse without finding out what it's worth. Visit CoventryDirect.com to find out if your policy qualifies. Or call 1-800-527-0100. Coventry Direct, redefining insurance.
Can my side be firm?
Mine's super soft. With the Sleep Number 360 smart bed, it can with your Sleep Number setting.
Can it help keep me asleep?
Yes, it senses your movements and automatically adjusts to keep you both comfortable. And now save up to $600 on select Sleep Number 360 smart beds, only for a limited time.
Out what it's worth. Visit CoventryDirect.com to find out if your policy qualifies. Or call 1-800-527-0100. Coventry Direct, redefining insurance.
Can my side be firm?
Mine's super soft. With the Sleep Number 360 smart bed, it can with your Sleep Number setting.
Can it help keep me asleep?
Yes, it senses your movements and automatically adjusts to keep you both comfortable. And now save up to $600 on select Sleep Number 360 smart beds, only for a limited time.
Meet Gravity, the original weighted blanket for sleep, stress, and anxiety. Gravity is the only weighted blanket demonstrated to improve sleep and reduce stress. Now available in cooling for summer.
We are back, and just to review, I can't overemphasize how cautious we are on projected winners. I can't underemphasize how overwhelming the indications need to be to call a state at the moment the polls close, as we did tonight in North Carolina for Joe Biden, as we have tonight in the Commonwealth of Virginia for Joe Biden. At that same hour, we called the home state for Bernie Sanders. That's where our discussion was right up until Mike Bloomberg won American Samoa.
American Samoa meeting today with the time difference. We didn't know exactly when we were going to get those results. A handful of delegates at stake. Mike Bloomberg wins. It looks like Tulsi Gabbard maybe in second place there.
Yeah.
As goes American Samoa, so goes... Yeah, I don't know. Well, we've got those results. Robert Gibbs, we wanted to make sure that we got your reaction to the way that Steve was describing what's going on in Virginia, watching that suburban vote coming in, watching sort of the scale of Biden's victory there.
I think that's what's going to be fascinating in those two states. Certainly, Biden is buoyed by that larger African-American vote, the strength of it. But winning in those suburban Richmond counties, winning in Northern Virginia, our report at Cameron Village Regional Library, a stone's throw from my alma mater at NC State in Raleigh, is in the middle of the types of neighborhoods, suburban neighborhoods, that are crucial in a swing state in a general election. Those are the places where the congressional candidates that took seats from Republicans in 2018 did well, and where somebody's going to have to do well in 2020 to be the next president of the United States. And if that vote is starting to coalesce and pick somebody, that suburban college-educated vote that hasn't really gone to either